guys, welcome back to See Mindy Mom and welcome back to my kitchen. Today I am filming another 5-pound bag of flour video. We're gonna see how much we can make with this 5-pound bag of flour, so stay tuned. Okay, you guys, this video has been a long time coming. I have wanted to make another one of these videos since I made the first one. It's been well over a month since I've done that, but as you know, if you've been watching my channel, my ovens have been broken. They are finally fixed, and so I can do some holiday baking, and I thought it would be fun to do another video where I take a 5-pound bag of flour and I see how many baked goods I can get from that. It's the week before Christmas, so I definitely have some things on my list that I want to check off and some baked goods that I just want to make ahead of time so I can take that off of my to-do list for next week because it's going to be very busy. Also, this is a fabulous time to get great deals on baking items. I know by the time you watch this, I guess it might be too late to run out to the store, but there might still be some good deals to be had the week of Christmas time. For instance, this bag of flour I got at Dollar General a couple weeks ago on sale, and it only cost me $1. It was on sale for $1.75, and they had a 75-cent coupon in their app, and I was able to get it for $1. I think one of you clued me into that on my last flour video because you said something about Dollar General having great sales. But I have discovered that this time of year around the holidays is a great time to get fabulous deals on pantry staples like flour, sugar, cake mixes, baking morsels like chocolate chips, and I even see some perishable items like butter and eggs go on sale like big time this time of year, I think because everybody's doing, holiday baking. There are a few things that I know for sure I want to make, but beyond that, I'm not really sure, so we'll just see where the day takes us, okay? Per the usual, if there are any recipes that have inspired me or that I am using, I will be sure to leave them linked in the description box below. First up on my list to make today is a copycat version of Texas Roadhouse rolls. If you are not familiar with Texas Roadhouse, it's a chain restaurant. I guess it's kind of like a Chili's meets a Saltgrass or a steakhouse or something like that. I'll be honest, my husband and I, when we go out to eat, which it has been ages and ages and ages since we've been out to a restaurant, we typically go to local places and not chains, but Texas Roadhouse is famous for their homemade rolls and their cinnamon butter, which they serve with their meals. And I have made these rolls several times last Christmas and at Easter. Actually, I think I've made them for a few Christmases now. They are really, really good, and I want them for Christmas dinner. So I'm gonna make them today and then pop them in the freezer, so all we have to do is reheat them. I already have kind of started on that, so it does call for scalded milk. Now, I'm not enough of a baking or cooking aficionado to be able to tell you why it has to be scalded milk, but I just heated 1 cup of milk on my stove until it reached about 180 to 190 degrees. And then I added just 3 tablespoons of softened butter to that, and it is cooling down now. I also have already put a 1/4 cup of warm water into my stand mixer with 1 teaspoon of yeast and 1 teaspoon of sugar to activate my yeast. So let me get you turned around and I'll show you how I'm putting the rest of these together. I'm gonna get this proofing so that we can start on the next thing. Okay, so you can see that my yeast mixture, look how bubbly it is. The yeast is activating really nicely. My milk that I scalded along with the butter, which has now melted in it, has cooled down, so it's safe for me to add this to my pan here or my bowl here without it like killing the yeast. And I'm also going to add a teaspoon of salt, a 1/4 cup of sugar, 1 egg, give that a stir, and then I'm going to add my flour just 1 cup at a time. I'll start with 1 cup, and I think I will need about 3.5 cups. You guys know, if you are bread makers, that flour, it just kind of depends on where you live. Sometimes it depends on how warm or hot your kitchen is, the season that it is. I'm going to say I'll probably end up needing about 3.5 cups of flour, but I'll come back on here and let you know. This is the recipe that I'm going from, is from a website called joecooks.com, but I do cut it in half because that would make a ton of bread and I don't need that much. And yes, I am watching Frugal Fit Mom as I am doing this. I always get her name wrong. I'm so sorry. I want to say Fit Frugal Mom, but it's Frugal Fit Mom. And yes, I do watch her channel. I've watched her channel since she probably had about like 15 or 20,000 subscribers, which is still really big, but like now she has over 200,000 subscribers. So you guys ask me a lot of times if I watch her. Yes, I did, and I have for a long time. Oh, and by the way, I did empty my 5-pound bag of flour into this big bowl because it will just be easier for me to measure it. And since I'm probably going to use all or at least most of it, it'll just be easier for me to have it in that bowl for this video. Can you see how my dough is starting to make like a dough glob and pull away from the side of the bowl? It's probably just about done. And I'm gonna pull that out and put it into this bowl, which I have greased with a little bit of butter. And then I'm going to cover it with a towel and pop it into the oven to proof. Now, since I'm using less yeast than the recipe calls for, it will take a little bit longer for this to rise the first time, but that's okay because I have lots of time. So I just decided to use less yeast. So I'm going to get this into the bowl and get it proofing, and then we'll go on to the next thing. The next thing I'm going to get started on are some pizza crusts. And my plan is to make some homemade pizza crusts and just par bake them, just cook them partially, and then freeze them so that sometime over the break we can have a homemade pizza night, and it will be a really easy meal for us while the kids are home, and whenever I'm tired of cooking and don't want to cook anymore, I can just pull those out of the freezer and we can top them with tomato sauce and cheese and toppings and stuff like that, and it'll be a really easy dinner one night. Now, I have to give a shout out to my friend Molly over at Classically Molly because she introduced me to the My Busy Kitchen pizza dough. It's sort of like a take on the 2-ingredient dough because it has Greek yogurt in it, but she uses yeast in hers so that it gives it a little bit of a rise. And instead of using self-rising flour, I'm going to be using all-purpose flour, so I'm going to be changing up this recipe a tad to reflect that. But self-rising flour is just regular flour that has baking powder and salt already in it. So let me get you down on the counter here and I'll show you what I'm using to make that, and I will be sure to leave that recipe linked in the description box below for the My Busy Kitchen pizza dough. I am scaling this up just a tad so that it will make more pizza crusts for me. I'm not doubling it, I'm like 1.5-ing it. So in this bowl, I have 3 cups of my flour. I have 4.5 teaspoons of baking powder. You heard that right, 4.5 teaspoons, and then 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. That is basically turning my flour from all-purpose into self-rising flour. I also added 1.5 teaspoons of my active dry yeast, and I just took a whisk and kind of combined all of that. And now I'm going to add 3/4 of a cup of non-fat plain Greek yogurt. Make sure you get plain Greek yogurt. You don't want vanilla yogurt in your pizza crust, right? I used my scale to measure this out, so it would be, pretty accurate. And I'm just gonna use my fork and start to combine that with the dry ingredients. So you can see how my flour and yogurt mixture, it's kind of crumbly. It's almost like cutting in butter into biscuit dough. And I'm starting with a cup of water, but I'm just gonna add it a little bit at a time. And I'm just gonna mix this until it makes kind of a sticky consistency for pizza dough. So I have a cup in here. We'll see if we need more or less. At some point, you just got to start using your hands, in my opinion. That's part of the fun when you're making dough like this, getting messy. Okay, so you can see that my dough is a little bit sticky, which is good, but it's still pulled away from the sides of the bowl. I did not end up using my full cup of water. It was more like 3/4 of a cup. I probably could have made this dough just a tad stickier. It would maybe fluff up a little bit faster, but I'm gonna go ahead and just leave it like this. And I did go ahead and grease the sides of my bowl so that as it rises, at least the sides of it won't stick to the bowl. So I'm gonna cover this and I'm gonna put it in the oven to proof. It's gonna need to proof for a little while, probably for several hours, because I did not use, very much yeast, but again, I have time, so I'm gonna save my yeast. For my next little flour project, I am cheating. And I'm going to use my bread maker to help me make the dough. I really thought that I wanted to make some pretzels as like a little snack that we can pull out sometime over the holidays, some little pretzel bites maybe. And I looked online for a recipe for a bread machine pretzel dough, and I found one at artandthekitchen.com. I will leave it linked in the description box below. So in my bread maker pan, I have a cup of water, 2 tablespoons of sugar, a tablespoon of butter, a teaspoon of salt, and then 2 3/4 cups of flour, and I sprinkled 2 teaspoons of yeast on top of that, just like the recipe calls for. And I really can't cut back on the yeast for this. When you're using the bread machine, I feel like it's gotta be just right because it's timed a certain way, and so if it doesn't rise completely in the amount of time that it's supposed to, it's not gonna come out right. So I'm gonna pop this into my bread maker on the dough setting. I don't want it to bake. I'm just gonna put it on the dough setting. It's gonna do the work of kneading it for me, and then we'll come back to it in a little bit and I'll show you how to make the pretzels because they require a little bit of extra work. You usually like do a baking soda bath and then bake them up, but I think they will be really yummy and delicious. You guys, I have now made dough for rolls, dough for pizza crusts, and dough in the bread maker for pretzels. And this, I still have like half of my flour left. You guys, look at how beautifully my pretzel dough rose. Look at how pretty and fluffy that is. The thing about making homemade pretzels is that you have to give them a baking soda bath after you form the pretzels. So on the stove behind me, I do have 6 cups of water with 1/3 of a cup of baking soda coming to a boil. And I'm gonna form the pretzels from the pretzel dough, and then I'll drop them in the baking soda bath and put them on a baking sheet to bake in my oven, which is preheating to 400. And they'll probably need to bake for, I'm guessing, like anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes, somewhere in that time frame. So I'll just keep an eye on them. The pretzels just came out of the oven and they look fabulous. The kids are begging to eat them and I have said, no, not until I take a thumbnail. And I am realizing that even after I make the next recipe that I plan to make, I'm still going to have flour left over. So I was thinking about what I wanted to make, and honestly, my ovens are going to be fairly occupied, both of them, over the next couple of hours as I finish making up all of this stuff. So I am doing another cheat, and I'm going to make a loaf of bread in my bread maker. It is a recipe that came with the little booklet that came with my bread maker. I've made it several times. It's called Parmesan Peppercorn French bread. And it's like a basic French bread recipe with, you know, water, oil, salt, yeast, flour, but it adds grated Parmesan cheese and freshly ground black pepper to it as well. And I've made it a lot and it's really great, especially toasted with pastas or with soups. So I'm just going to utilize my bread maker for that so that I can have my ovens free to finish doing several of the other things that I want to make. Okay, so my rolls have more than doubled in size. The dough has risen to more than double, and now I'm going to roll them out. And to me, one of the defining traits of a Texas Roadhouse roll, besides the delicious cinnamon sugar butter that they serve them with, is the square shape. So I'm gonna roll this out into a rectangle, and then I'm gonna fold it in half, and then cut it into little rectangles, and I will let those sit on a baking sheet until they have risen again, until they have about doubled in size, and then we'll bake them at 350 for about 10 to 15 minutes until they're finished. Sorry you cannot see my face. Sorry guys, I'm here, it's me. I am kneading my pizza dough now. It rose beautifully as well, and I'm actually going to use half of this to make a large pizza crust, and then with the other half of it, I'm gonna make 3 small pizza crusts, and I'm gonna just par bake those in the oven. I have my oven preheating to 400. I'm just gonna bake them for like 7 or 8 minutes. I just don't want them to be doughy anymore. And then I am going to basically, like, you know, flash freeze them. I'm gonna put them into the freezer for a little bit until they're like frozen solid, and then I can stack them on top of each other in a Ziploc bag and freeze them, and we will have some yummy pizza crust to make homemade pizzas with. Okay, so I'm going to make one more thing. Now the theme for this video was supposed to be like yeast items. So you notice that everything that I have made involved using yeast. And I was going to make cinnamon rolls or some kind of sweet roll, and quite frankly, I just don't have it in me to do another bread like that. So I'm going to make some cookies. Now, my favorite kind of cookie is a thumbprint, and there is a bakery here in South Tulsa called Merritt's that makes delicious thumbprints. The best ones are at a bakery in Oklahoma City called Brown's Bakery. I have tried multiple times to recreate a homemade thumbprint that tastes as good as the ones from those two bakeries, and I have not found it yet. But last Easter, I think it was, I made some sugar cookies. My friend Molly, I've already mentioned her over at Classically Molly, she makes the most beautiful cookies. If you've not seen her creations, you can go check out her channel. I think she has a business now for cookie making in her area. But she sent to me a recipe for a basic sugar cookie that we really, really liked. It is from sweetSugarBelle.com. And so I'll leave it linked in the description box below. And it's really simple. It's just, I'm looking at it right here, butter, confectioner's sugar, egg, vanilla extract, almond emulsion, all-purpose flour, baking powder, and salt. I don't have almond emulsion or even almond extract, so I won't be using that. I'm going to attempt to turn these into thumbprints instead of into rolled out sugar cookies, because I remember when I tried these last year, I thought, these are really tasty, and these taste like the thumbprint cookies that I like, and they have the same kind of texture. I'm also going to share with you my top secret buttercream frosting shortcut. So you'll want to know this. Okay, so stay with me. We're gonna make some cookies now. I thought that I would share with you my top secret, super easy buttercream frosting shortcut with you. And that is, buy it from the bakery. This is not the same as the frosting that comes in the tubs that you see with the cake mixes and stuff. I just go up to the bakery counter in my Walmart and I tell them I would like to buy some buttercream icing. Normally they put it in those little round containers like they have at the deli, but the last couple times I've been to get it, they haven't had any, so they just stuck it in one of these. And I don't know why, but I cannot make buttercream icing that is as fluffy and tastes as good as this does. And so I just take this shortcut. I mean, it was $3 for a pound of it. I'm just gonna put this into a Ziploc bag and cut a hole off the end of it so I can pipe it onto my thumbprint cookies here in a little bit, which I'll show you. The rolls have risen again. They've basically doubled in size. So I'm gonna pop these into the oven at 350 and let them bake. I'm gonna check on them after 10 minutes. And then we'll see where they are, but they look lovely already and they smell amazing. The rolls are done and they came out beautifully. This is the tester. Well, I gotta test everything, right? It's the little small one that I made from the scratch dough. So they come apart really easily. Put a little butter on them. Oh, they smell so, so good. I will also try to leave a link to the recipe for the whipped cinnamon sugar butter that they serve with these, because I've made that to go along with these and they're really good. And don't forget, I will leave this recipe that I use linked in the description box, but I cut it in half because it would have made more than I needed if I hadn't. So here goes. So good. So here is everything that my baking produced today. This is 5 pounds of flour plus the other ingredients. I was able to make 6 pretzels. There's only 5 here, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm not sure these are even gonna make it to the freezer. Everybody is itching to get their hands on these. Look, somebody tried to be sneaky and just eat the ends of these off. I have 1 big pizza crust and 3 small pizza crusts, a loaf of Parmesan peppercorn bread that will be great toasted with soups, I made 16 of these Texas Roadhouse copycat rolls that I will be freezing. And there are 32 little cookies here with icing. And I think there were actually an even 3 dozen when I left the house, but when I came back, there were a few conspicuously missing. So I think that is not bad at all. All right, you guys, I'm gonna go ahead and close this one out. Thank you so much for coming along with me. I know that I used a lot of other ingredients, although this time I didn't use as much milk and butter and eggs as I did with the last video, but I used a lot more sugar, and then of course I bought the icing for the cookies. But I feel like if you're watching this video, you're probably interested in baking, so some of these are probably ingredients that, you know, you already have on hand if you're a person who bakes or who cooks from scratch. But this is a fun one, and now we have some things to stock our freezer with and our kitchen with as the holidays roll in next week. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll be sure to check in with another video very soon. Bye.